Ancient Egypt is a civilization that has been dead for over 2,000 years, yet it still holds a huge fascination for people all across the world. Why are we so fascinated by these people? In today's video, we will look at the entire history of ancient Egypt in just 5 minutes, so let's get started. Ancient Egypt began around 3100 BC with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt by King Menes. The country would go through many different dynasties, each ruling over the land for a period of time until they would eventually lose control and a new dynasty would begin. Ancient Egyptian society was a highly stratified one with the pharaoh at the top, followed by priests, nobles, scribes, artisans, merchants, farmers, and slaves. Egyptians believed that their pharaoh was a god on earth, and he was responsible for maintaining order and balance in the universe. The pharaoh's wife could also hold immense power in the kingdom. One famous example of this was Hatshepsut, who ruled Egypt from 1478 to 1458 BC. She was one of the most successful pharaohs in Egyptian history, and she was responsible for many building projects including temples and tombs. Egyptians developed a sophisticated system of hieroglyphics, which allowed them to record their history and culture. They also made great advancements in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Their innovations spread throughout the Mediterranean and Middle East regions and had a profound impact on other civilizations. Unfortunately, much of what we know about ancient Egypt comes from the writings of outsiders. For example, the Greeks and Romans wrote extensively about the Egyptians, but often with a critical or mocking tone. This can make it difficult to separate fact from fiction when learning about this ancient culture. But if we take what outsiders say with a grain of salt and instead focus on the evidence left behind by the Egyptians themselves, we can get a more accurate picture of what life was like in ancient Egypt. After the New Kingdom, Egypt went into a period of decline. It was ruled by foreign powers such as the Nubians and Assyrians. However, the true decline of ancient Egypt began when Alexander the Great conquered the country in 332 BC. After his death, Egypt became a part of the Ptolemaic kingdom ruled over by his general, Ptolemy. Although the Greek language replaced Egyptian as the official language and many Egyptians converted to Greek religion, there was still a significant Egyptian cultural presence in society. However, this would change when Cleopatra, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom, died in 30 BC and Egypt became a province of Rome. Under Roman rule, Egypt was mostly seen as a source of grain and other agricultural products. The Romans built several important structures in Egypt, including the Temple of Isis at Philae and the Fortress of Babylon. However, they also exploited the Egyptian people, forcing them to work long hours on farms and in mines for little pay. As a result, many Egyptians became impoverished during the Roman period. Unfortunately, the Roman occupation of Egypt would come to an end in 641 AD when the Muslim general Omar ibn al-As conquered the country. Under Muslim rule, Egypt became part of the Islamic world and Arabic replaced Egyptian as the official language. However, unlike the Romans, the Muslims respected Egyptian culture and did not force conversions. In fact, many Egyptians converted to Islam willingly during the first few centuries of Muslim rule. Egypt continued to be an important center of trade and culture during this period, and it was also home to several prominent universities. Unfortunately, Egypt's golden age would come to an end in the 13th century when the country was invaded by the Mongols. In the 16th century, Egypt came under the control of the Ottoman Empire. At this point, the country was mostly seen as a way station between Europe and Asia. During the Ottoman period, Egypt was also plagued by internal conflicts and rebellions. However, in the early 18th century, a new dynasty of Egyptian rulers emerged known as the Mamluks. The Mamluks were a military caste that had been brought in from Southeast Asia to serve in the Ottoman army. However, they soon rebelled against their Ottoman masters and established their own rule in Egypt. The Mamluk period marked a brief return to power for the Egyptian people, but it would come to an end in 1882 when the British invaded the country. The British occupation of Egypt was controversial from the start. Many Egyptians saw the British as imperialists who were only interested in exploiting their country's resources. This resentment would eventually lead to the Egyptian Revolution of 1952, which resulted in the establishment of a new republic. The new government of Egypt was led by Gamal Abdel Nasser, who quickly set about nationalizing Egypt's economy and ending foreign influence in the country. Nasser also played a key role in the Arab-Israeli conflict, fighting alongside the Arabs against the Israelis in both the 1948 and 1967 wars. Unfortunately, Nasser's policies would eventually lead to economic difficulties for Egypt. By the 1970s, the country was facing severe shortages of food and other essential goods. This led to the resignation of Nasser and the beginning of a new era in Egyptian history. Ancient Egyptian religion was a polytheistic religion with a wide variety of gods and goddesses. Some of the most popular gods included Ra, the sun god, Osiris, the god of the underworld, and Anubis, the god of the dead. Egyptians believed that after a person died, their soul would undergo a series of tests in the afterlife. If the soul passed these tests, they would be allowed to enter the field of reeds, a paradise-like afterlife. To ensure their successful passage, Egyptians practiced a number of rituals and customs, including mummification. Mummies were created through a complex process that involved removing the internal organs, dehydrating the body, and then wrapping it in linen. Egyptians believed that the mummy would eventually be reanimated in the afterlife, so they took great care to preserve the body. Egyptian society was patriarchal, meaning that men had more rights and privileges than women. However, women could own property and run businesses in some cases. They could also serve as priestesses, and some female pharaohs even ruled the country. One of the most famous female pharaohs was Cleopatra, who was renowned for her intelligence and political acumen. However, despite the occasional exception, Egyptian women generally had a subordinate role in society compared to men. Ancient Egypt is considered to be one of the world's oldest civilizations. Emerging along the Nile River around 3100 BC, it lasted for over 3,000 years, leaving behind a rich legacy of culture, art, and architecture. Ancient Egyptians developed a writing system, built massive pyramids and temples, and made significant advancements in mathematics and astronomy. Their society was highly stratified, with the pharaoh at the top of the social hierarchy. Egyptian religion was polytheistic, with a belief in the afterlife and the practice of mummification. Women had limited rights, but there were some female pharaohs. The civilization declined after being conquered by various outside forces, including the Persians, Greeks, and Romans. It finally ended with the Muslim conquest in 641 AD. We hope you enjoyed our whirlwind tour of ancient Egyptian history. If you want to learn more about this fascinating civilization, stay tuned for more videos. We will continue to explore the history of ancient Egypt and other ancient cultures in future episodes. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our new videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. And remember, if you're ever facing tough challenges, just think of the ancient Egyptians. They faced tougher challenges than you. They built the pyramids. And here you are complaining about having to go to school. Oh, wait, never mind. You don't have to go to school tomorrow because you watched the entire video. I'm actually very proud of you right now. Well done. Now get to bed so you can get ready for another exciting day of learning. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a comment below. We love reading your comments, and they help us make better videos for you. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe so you never miss out on any of our fun and educational videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.